Everyone in Washington expected it, but no one knew for certain when it would happen. Now, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy has made it official. He's retiring. This means Donald Trump will get the second Supreme Court appointment of his presidency. And a huge political battle over the future of the court lies ahead. A landmark case just decided by the Supreme Court is an example of how the vote of one justice can make a big difference on the home front. In a major win for the Trump administration, the United States Supreme Court ruled that it's within the president's power to restrict travel for citizens of countries deemed dangerous to America. The 5-4 decision angered some on the court. And joining us with some insights is Jordan Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice. Jordan, the majority opinion was written by Chief Justice Roberts. What did he say?
Well, and the Chief Justice writing this opinion does not go without mention, because this goes to the heart of presidential power, one of the top issues the Supreme Court grapples with ultimately. And it's why throughout this whole process with the travel ban, or whatever you want to call this this executive order, that everyone knew it would ultimately be decided by the Supreme Court because it had to do with presidential power. And what the Chief Justice said, which is what courts have said when they look back at time, you look at is a president operating under the power both of the Constitution and power that's been delegated to the president by Congress. And here you've got the commander-in-chief power that's in the Constitution in Article 2, and you have a specific statutory power that has been given to the president through the Immigration and Nationality Act, and it's a section 1182F, and it says that a president can determine to stop any class of aliens or non-aliens from entering the country if he believes they will be detrimental for any amount of time. So Congress couldn't have made it any clearer that the president can do this. And again, it's unfortunately, I would say, it was a 5-4 decision when in fact it should have been 9-0. You see the politics at play here.
And I know Justice Sotomayor wrote the minority response, and in a rare move, she actually delivered it from the bench. What did she say?
You know, again, they have tried to use this idea that this was all about rhetoric, and that the president was really trying to implement a Muslim ban. Now, if you look at what was actually put in place here, yes, when you're talking about the threat of national security, many countries are predominantly Muslim, where that threat is from, but they weren't just because they were Muslim countries. I mean, when we started out, there were 8 or 9 countries, and the list has gotten smaller. Countries that are not majority Muslim, like North Korea, have been added as well. And 2 majority Muslim countries have been taken off. Iraq and Sudan were able to comply. That's the cool thing about this travel order, is that if you comply with what the U.S. wants and you can work with the U.S., you can be taken off the list regardless of what the religious majority makeup is of your country.
Well, I know some Muslims have always said the travel policy discriminates against them. It's a Muslim ban. But if you look at the 5 countries, that's only 5 out of maybe 50 Muslim countries.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you wanted to do a Muslim ban, you'd have to ban a lot more countries, right? I mean, so if you look at this list, and Gary, you travel around the world a lot, and I've done a lot of travel as well. Initially, many of these countries were places that you could almost consider failed states. I mean, Yemen is still on the list. That's one where, like it or not, there's no way they can comply right now with being able to vet who is getting on a plane or who is traveling from Yemen, and if they are safe or not when they're engaged in the civil war conflict. Same goes for Syria. In Syria, we know that ISIS was able, for a period of time, to actually capture Syrian passport machines to make valid passports. Fraudulent, but valid.
Yeah, I've had people say to me, well, how come Saudi Arabia isn't on this list? After all, they housed that was the home of the 9/11 terrorists. And I said, well, yeah, that was 17 years ago. Yeah. The world has changed. The threat has changed in 17 years. Libya, for example, Sudan. And as you mentioned, Syria and Yemen, those wars weren't going on 17 years ago. So how is all of this going to affect U.S. immigration policy in the days ahead, Jordan?
Well, I think this gives the president and the Trump administration a lot more flexibility to decide. As the president said, this was not the be-all, end-all of his national security plan. It got so much attention, Gary, but the truth is this was just one piece of our national security. So I think it's a very powerful tool that this president and future presidents will be able to utilize.
Yet a federal judge in San Diego, Jordan, ordered that Within 30 days, the Trump administration must reunite all illegal immigrant children with their parents. And it seems a little like judicial overreach to me, one judge legislating from the bench. What do you think about that?
I think we've already seen the idea from the Trump administration and from officials on both sides that they want to see the family reunifications done, and they have put in the policy to stop families being divided. So this ruling may just be more politics, like you said, and overreach, because ultimately I think this administration would like to see this done well beyond within 30 days. So I imagine this one ends up being moot. If they decide to appeal, it would be because they feel like the judge, again, did not have the authority to make a decision like this. But ultimately, I think we all agree. We want these families to be reunited, even if ultimately they will be, most of them, deported, that they should be deported as family units.
Jordan, what is the authority of these judges? I mean, it seems like a lot of them are legislating from the bench. You get one guy making a decision that affects the entire country.
Well, and that is the travel ban case in a nutshell. Came out of Hawaii and California and a few district courts, and then of course both of those were in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a very liberal circuit. So the circuit judges were agreeing with them and using the same kind of rhetoric and not really looking at the law. And there's a big difference. I think, Gary, you saw it with the travel case. You saw Chief Justice Roberts, he looks at the text of the law in the case, and you saw Justice Sotomayor, and she was looking at kind of the surrounding theatrics of the law and the rhetoric that was used around the law and the campaign, what was going on in the campaign around the law. That is fundamentally the two different schools of thought when it comes to judicial philosophy. That activist judge who says, I must get involved, even if there's not really a legal way for me to do so, I'll figure one out. And then a real purist who says, I will look at the law and determine if this violates the Constitution or meets constitutional standards. And that's my job, to call balls and strikes.
Thanks for weighing in. Thanks for your time. Thanks for those insights.
Thank you, Gary.